Matt from Tackle.com as well as Last Chance Bait and Tackle. I want to thank you for joining our latest Periscope episode. Tonight I'm going to actually be talking to you about a technique I really utilize throughout the spawn, the pre-spawn, the spawn, and the post-spawn. And growing up in Southern California, we're faced with heavy fishing pressure on most of our body waters. So one thing that I do different from most people is I'm always trying to think 1, 2, and 3 steps ahead of everybody else. That's how I can attack these larger fish at their most vulnerable state. Not a lot of guys are fishing the fish that I'm looking for. So tonight we're going to be talking about the swim jig, and it's a very, very good tool for locating groups of fish. Now, during the pre-spawn, the spawn, and the post-spawn, fish are located in all different parts of the water column. You got fish shallow looking to spawn. You got mid-water column fish that are moving in transition up and down. Could be pre-spawn fish, could be post-spawn fish. Then you have your deeper fish that either are suspended fish or fish that have yet to even think about spawning. So by utilizing swim jigs, you can cover all different parts of the water column to find the best groups of fish that may harbor your giants. So right now I'm actually going to get into talking about the actual swim jigs. Now, think about it. A swim jig is just what it sounds like. It's a jig that you swim through the water column. And a lot of people have a hard time distinguishing swim jig versus spinnerbait. Okay, why would you throw one over the other? Well, with a swim jig, you're able to come through cover so much better than a spinnerbait. With a spinnerbait, you have blades, you have your hook, you have your trailer, you have everything, you have wire. As you're coming through shallow grass, coming through wood, you're going to hang up a lot more than you will with a compact bait, such as a swim jig right here. So we're going to start talking about 2 different types of swim jigs in general. I classify them as bladed swim jigs and standard swim jigs. Now, we're going to go into a typical swim jig. And I'm going to show you the head design on several swim jigs. And it's not by coincidence, it's by design. If you look at the heads of these swim jigs, generally all the heads are pointed. And if you look carefully, all the hooks, the eye of the hooks are all in line. It allows your bait to come through cover so much better than others. And one thing that I like about that is there's 2 different ways I'll fish these swim jigs right here. I may fish them deep in sparse cover or rock, but a lot of times I'm covering water down the bank. So with a swim jig, you'll still utilize your weed guard right here. You can thin it, you can chop it, you can do whatever you want. But this weed guard in combination with that pointy head allows that bait to maneuver through cover without tangling up, fouling up. Reason why you wouldn't want to use a football head? Think about it. The head is wider. It's going to hit cover, stick. Come through grass, there's more stuff for that grass to stick onto. So having a bait with a pointy head, just like this Johnny C's swim jig right here, will allow yourself to come through cover a lot better. Now, with swim jigs, obviously, you're going to throw them through cover, you're going to throw them through grass, you're going to throw them through wood. You have to distinguish what part of the water column you want to target, whether or not you're fishing shallow or you're fishing deep. Say I'm fishing a shallower swim jig. I want to opt for sizes in that 1/4 to 3/8 category. At the same time, I can still fish a 1/2, 3/4, or 1, but I'm going to find myself fouling up in that cover, in that wood, in that grass. If I were to fish it deep, I want to fish something heavier than a 1/2 ounce. I want my bait to get down in a hurry. So, with that being said, I often classify my jigs 2 different types, shallow versus deep. Now, when you're picking skirts, I'll go later into detail about how I would fish and why I would pick one over the other, deep versus shallow. But when picking your swim jig, the most important part, as we know in anything we do, is to identify the forage the fish are feeding on and then throw that jig at that depth. So if I'm fishing fish that are more bait-oriented, I'm going to opt for more of a shad pattern bait. This right here is like a sexy shad color, chartreuse shad. Now, if I find, if they're on bait that's, threadfin or whatever, I may mix my colors depending upon water clarity. Off-color water, I want something that's going to stand out a lot more. Clear water, I want more of a ghost type approach. But let's say they're on bluegill. Let's say on their baby bass. I'm going to opt for more of my green pumpkin colors, like these kind of guys right here. And a lot of times, it's okay if you want to experiment with your color choices. I tie a lot of my own jigs. I do a lot of different things to try to determine what the fish are feeding on. As you can see right here, this jig right here is a variation of green pumpkin purple. I've narrowed it down, and you can also buy that through, California Reservoir Lures. But I've narrowed that color scheme down to my bluegill bait, more summertime conditions. So when you're picking colors on swim jigs, identify what they're feeding on. They're feeding on carp color swim jig. They're feeding on baby bass. make it look like a baby bass, just like this CRL right here. Now, as you can see with the different types of swim jigs, there's a million different trailers out there. You have boot tail, you have curl tail, you have straight tail. How do you know what to use? Well, there's no real right or wrong way or reason to pick one trailer over another, but being that I'm throwing this bait through cover, I'm utilizing pops, I'm turning that handle, pulling it through cover, I want a trailer with a little bit of action. I may throw a curl tail grub, just like this. A lot of people look at the Kalen's brand and say, oh, that's old school, I don't want to throw it. I want to throw like a Reaction Innovations dip or a Trixie Shark or something like that on the back of it. I want a trailer that's going to put off maximum action at slower speeds, because sometimes you're throwing quarter ounce. You're moving that bait through the water column and stuff like that. You want action. You don't want a bait that's too stiff. One trailer that I've actually fell absolutely in love with right here is the Ultravibe Speedworm right here. This has been a very, very important tool for me over the years, because not only can I fish it obviously through grass by itself, but I can actually hack it just like that. Very, very compact bait, but on the back of a swim jig right here, it's money. I always rig this bait tail down, just like that. So that cup right here is down on the bottom half of the bait. As I'm reeling that through the water column, I'm popping, I'm twitching. Water's catching that bottom flat right there, the cut tail right there, and it's allowing this tail to twist and to move all over the place. It's definitely helped me improve my odds on my bites with these particular swim jigs. And again, match your color to the actual color of the swim jig and the color of the forage you're actually looking to target. And your weight size is definitely going to be determined by where the fish are holding that in the water column. When I go into more technique and rod selection, I'll help you determine why I would throw a 3/4 ounce, why I would throw a 1/4 ounce, and we'll go from there. Now that you know what a swim jig is, even though you probably had a basic understanding, we'll go over it one more time. Pointy your nose, inline eye, coloration that matches the forage you're targeting. Now, it is okay to fish swim jigs without weed guards. As you can see right here, I'm a very, very big supporter of no weed guards on my baits. That's only if I'm fishing in open water or mainly rock situations. Having a weed guard allows you to pull it through cover easier. Without a weed guard, when I'm fishing deep and I'm ripping that thing off the rocks, having that big bite hook, no weed guard, I can hook a fish at a long distance away and know I got full hook in it. So I wanted to touch that really, really quick. Now, you have your bladed swim jigs, your vibration lures, or what we call chatterbaits, just like this right here. These baits I use to cover water very, very efficiently when I know fish are in the upper half of the water column. I'm throwing this down tree lines. I'm throwing it down grass edges. Now, what I look for in a chatterbait is a bigger hook. I like a longer hook, something 4/0, 5/0, 6/0 hook. Now, with this particular chatterbait right here, this is the Picasso shock blade. This is as close to perfect as I've been able to get. One thing that I've found when I fish these particular chatterbaits, obviously they'll imitate shad, they'll imitate bluegill, baby bass, whatever. I turn the reel really fast. I fish a high gear ratio reel. I move. I cook down the bait. And one big problem I've had with similar chatterbaits is I'd be buying my 3/8 ounce, my 1/2 ounce, and all that kind of stuff. I'd be putting my boot tails, single tails, whatever on the back of them. I'd burn that thing down the bank, and I'd find out that my chatterbaits would want to lift too much, and I have to slow myself down. I hate slowing down. I know I have to do it sometimes, but I absolutely hate slowing down. I find that if I can cover water more efficiently, I can find these better groups of bigger fish. And that's what all I'm about. I want big, quality fish, and I want a lot of them. I want to have 20, 30 fish a day. In the back of my head, I know I can do it. So I'm going to fish a bait that can stay down. I opt, it sounds crazy for a lot of you guys, I fish a 3/4 to a 1 ounce chatterbait. And a lot of guys are looking at me probably going like, why would you throw such a heavy bait? Well, the reason being is this tail actually is kind of, I had this on from a recent date at Lake Skinner. But I fish a lot of boot tails in the back of my chatterbait. Stuff like the spark shad right here, or a fish trap, or a dipper. And what I found is on a fast retrieve, that boot tail restricts that water flow around the bait, allowing my bait to stay in the upper, probably 1.5 to 3 foot of the water column on a fast retrieve. The thing I found was if I were to fish the trailers that I used to throw a lot of zoom flukes. I still do on my lighter chatterbaits, but on my heavier ones, I found that these baits get too far down in the water column. There's not that much restriction on the actual tail, so my baits are deeper than what I want to target. I want a lot of action behind my bait. With a chatterbait itself, as you tie, right here, I got a piece of line on it, but you tie off to the front of this particular blade right here. And as you reel that thing through the water, this blade is flopping side to side, causing the bait to move side to side, in turn causing your tail to move side to side. So I want the most amount of action I have. Because I'm burning and cooking it across the bank, a fish can see it a long way away. I want to give them a reason to go like, what's that? What's going on over here? Vibration of the blade, dirty water, excellent thing. Tail action right there, it's more vibration of that skirt as it's moving back and forth. Sometimes this is the ticket, dirty water, nighttime conditions, or when you just need to get a bite down the bank. Now, there's a lot of different trailers, a lot of different brands. I'll actually go into chatterbait brands. But Z-Man, awesome chatterbaits, Picasso shock blades, killer chatterbaits. I call everything a chatterbait. Vibration, vibrating jigs and stuff like that. But then Shockblade FX is the new ones with the actual tied hair on. Very, very cool baits. Pick a bait that you actually like the most and then just run with it. Identify your forage, like I said, with your standard swim jigs. Are they on shad? Are they on bluegill? Are they on baby bass? You want to pick these baits according to what's going on in your body of water. Someone's coming in the door. But anyway, so you have all your different trailers. I talked about the chatterbait a little bit. You guys are very, very familiar with the baits. Talk a little about the trailers and stuff like that. When I'm fishing a chatterbait that is lighter, let's say, than 3/4 of an ounce, I'm fishing my 1/4 ounce, 3/8, half-ounce chatterbaits. A lot of times, I'll opt for a Zoom Super Fluke, just like this. Being that I know that I don't need to cook this bait nearly as fast as this guy right here, this is more of my finesse approach to the whole thing, I can opt for more of a straight tail bait. And you can do the same thing with a lot of different baits on the market. You got your flukes, you got your Z-Man products, you got all sorts of cool stuff, fin bait for it. Match the hatch, look at the bait, identify that whole thing. Now, the cool thing about all this stuff, and I'm actually going to show you a little bit of a trick that I've discovered that's helped me prolong the life of my baits themselves. And Decoy makes something I talked about in the previous Periscope, and I was talking about pre-spawn patterns and stuff like that, is Decoy makes what's called a versatile keeper. What these are little neoprene, little grommet type deals. And what you can actually do is, we've all been through it. We're catching a lot of fish on a bait, hooking fish, all that kind of good stuff. And our bait wants to slide up the hook like that. We're going through so many different baits, and we're sitting here like at this tournament situation. We have one bag of baits. We've killed half the bag, and it's 9 o'clock. It's like, oh crap, what are we going to do? What you do with these particular pieces, there's different sizes, small, medium, large. And what you'll do is you'll slide, after you put your trailer on, you can slide that up and over the hook. And what it does, it butts up against your trailer, preventing it from falling off. And this has helped me extremely well when I'm dealing with fishing like high rate of speed baits, like this one right here. I'm covering the water, I'm making a lot of casts. That's one of my things I like to do, long distance cast, high on the trolling motor, fast retrieve. When I'm doing that repetitively, whipping my bait out there, I have a big tendency to have my trailers come down just like that. I hate going through a pack of, whether it be Kitech, Fat Impacts or anything like that, or even the Megabass baits. I pay a lot of money for my trailers. I don't want to go through them very, very fast. So having a Decoy versatile keeper has definitely helped me prolong the life of some of my baits. Now that we talked about your swim jigs, you got your chatterbaits, I'm going to go into a typical setup and how I would pick my stuff. Okay, obviously when I'm going to go back to these guys right here. When I'm fishing a standard swim jig...
Oh, sorry, hold on. Someone's saying put one on. I don't know if they want you to actually put a trailer.
Okay.
Or maybe the versatile keeper.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'll do right here is we're going to open this joker up.
Yeah, he said keeper. Thanks.
No problem. They always put these things on there. It's always a mystery. They got tiny fingers, so... Okay, so let's say I'm going to put... Actually, I got a fresh bait right here. I'm going to put it on this Johnny C bait right here. I always fold my wig arts back just like that. One big thing that I do is to achieve maximum tail action, I always want the cut tail down. So I'm always going to put that away from me just like that. I'm going to slide it up and over the hook, just like this. As you can tell, there's no real right or wrong way. Just like that. So now I have my bait. Cut tail down, just like that. And what I'll do with this versatile keepers is...
Hoping we can get it on video right.
There's my hook. There's these rubber pieces right here. Ignore my fingernails. There's a hole right in the middle of them, just like that. And what I do is I slide that thing down, just like this. And it sits up there. As I pull up, it's not allowing that bait to come up on that shaking of that hook. It allows me to cover water a lot longer without having to sit there and kill all my baits. So let's say you're out there one day. You're on a great bite. You got 4 baits left in your bag, and you start railing fish at the end of the day. You're just hooking fish left and right, 5-pounder, 6-pounder, and your baits are falling apart. By having this on here, you could actually have, we've all had it happen to us, you can have a cored out bait right here, not wanting to stay on that keeper. By putting this on here, it gives you that extra security, and you can put more than one on there. It's not impeding on any part of your hookup ratio. You still have that gap, your hook point's free, all it is down there. It's holding your bait on. Very, very awesome little trick that I found over the years that since we actually got these baits in, or these little dudes in, it's actually helped me prolong the life of a bait. It's amazing. So like I was saying, we're going to go back into now rods and reels. Now, when you're throwing each of these, there's going to be different rods and reels, different tools in the toolbox, different tools for the job. So going back into our actual swim jig, okay, classify them, like I said, 2 different types of swim jigs. You got your shallow stuff and you got your deep stuff. So I got stuff from 1/4 ounce to 3/8 ounce, and I got my, or quarter to half ounce, and then 3/4 to 1 ounce. Now, obviously, you don't need a super, super stout rod to throw a 3/8 ounce swim jig or a 1/4 ounce swim jig. What I like, Megabass makes a rod that I'm actually fishing personally. It's called an F5 75 double X. It's called the Extreme Mission Type F. What this rod actually is, it has a super soft tip to it, but a ton of backbone. It allows me to do a lot of different things on this one rod. Being that I'm going to be fishing a lot of these more compact swim jigs through cover, I want a rod that's small enough that I can roll cast tight in between trees. I want to flip it between toolies. I want to do a lot with this. Now, having a smaller rod versus, let's say like an 8-foot stick. Everybody wants to throw big rods these days, or flipping sticks these days. Having a small rod allows me to skip casts. It allows me to put casts in tiny areas other people miss. Being that I'm always about trying to do what people aren't doing, I want to be ahead of the pack. I want to be able to put my baits where nobody's been. Like, for instance, I'll talk about it right now because I've had my fun, but like at our local lake, Lake Skinner, I've been on bites out there recently that I've been able to do stuff 3 months ahead of time. I'm catching some amazing fish. I'm throwing frogs. I'm throwing spinner baits. I'm doing a bunch of cool different stuff because I'm willing to do different things, put my baits and techniques in areas they're not supposed to be. So having a rod like Extreme Mission Type F is killer to me. Now, when I'm throwing those small baits, you don't have to throw Megabass. You can throw Shimano. You can throw iRod. You can throw Daiwa. What I'm looking for in a rod is I want something 7 foot or above. I try to keep it under 7'6". 7 foot's fine. I want something fast to extra fast action. I want something rated 8 to 15 pound test, 10 to 20 pound test. So with that being said, I want a rod that has a softer tip to it. So I obviously don't have the line rigged up through my guides on this one, but I want a rod that's a softer tip to it. That allows me to place my cast. Too stiff of a rod, you're going to want to pull your cast left or right. Having a rod just soft enough in the tip is going to allow me to effectively target those zones. Now, like I said, there's the deep side of things too. One of my favorite methods that I've discovered with the swim jig is to fish stuff deeper than anybody else would even think to throw these things. I love to throw the swim jig in 30, 40, 50 feet of water. Yes, it can be stupid at times. What's the difference between a standard jig and a swim jig? What I found is in the wintertime, you don't see bluegill on the bank. Where are they going? They're deep. They're following that thermocline. They're going to be in that most hospitable zone. A lot of times, deeper than 30 foot of water, rock structure. So what I'll do is I'll throw, me personally, I throw a 7'9" action rod. I throw a flipping stick. I'm throwing 15-pound fluorocarbon on this particular stick right here. Now, the reason why, as I talked about this in the previous Periscope episode, throwing the jig, is I've adapted a different style than most people have. I love long-distance casts because it's less intrusive on my spots. So when I have a 7'9" action rod, I'm pairing that thing up to oftentimes a 3/4 ounce head, just like this. It allows me to bomb a cast really, really far across my spot. Put in freeze will allow it to fall down. If I get bit on the initial fall, I have the peace of mind that I got a stout rod, high gear ratio reel. I can crack one of those fish at a long distance away and have the peace of mind that I put a hook in that fish. A lot of guys will fish too soft to rods fishing long distance techniques, and by the time they come tight to a bass, they go to set that hook, that rod's already doubled over. They're going to have to set 3, 4, 5 times. They may think, oh man, I just missed that one. Dang it. Well, they never put a hook in a fish to begin with. So long distance baits, I'll actually or heavier chatter baits, or heavier swim jigs, long distance, I'll fish a heavier action rod. Now, again, you don't have to fish the mega bass rods like I'm talking about today. But what they do for you is they're going to be a lighter weight rod, heavy action, softer tips to actually put a hook in a fish. You could be fishing your Shimano rods, like I said, Daiwa, all that kind of stuff. Pick a rod that suits you, has a backbone to it. You want to crack a fish down deep. Now, since we're talking about the swim jigs, and I'm actually kind of breaking things down, it'll streamline it. I'm actually going to give you kind of scenarios why I would pick a heavy versus light. Say I'm going down the bank, I'm fishing the pre-spawn period, or say I'm fishing right in the middle of the spawn, which we're dealing with right now. We got fish pre-spawn, we got spawn, and we got post-spawn fish. We got fish all over the part of the water column. The problem I see most people have right now is they're too keyed in on throwing, let's say, a Senko. We know Senkos catch fish. They catch a lot of fish. They catch very big fish. But why limit yourself to one specific part of the water column as slow, as a Senko is? So I'll oftentimes come down the bank and go, okay, I want the hungry fish. I want the active fish. I want fish either moving up or the fish that have moved off. I want pre-spawn or post-spawn fish. So I'm going to go down the bank with like a 3/8 ounce swim bait. I'm just going to go down the bank. It could be a curl tail bait. It can be a boot tail bait, whatever. I'm just going down the bank. I'm covering water. What I always do is I always pick apart my zones. I pick apart my shallow structure, my points, my tree lines, my grass lines, my tule lines. I'm just going down the bank. If I see action, I hook a fish, I'm going to log that in the back of my head and go, okay, there's fish up high. I'm going to keep going down the bank. I'm going to ignore that fish even though I logged it. I'm going to keep covering water. Hook another fish. Hook another fish. I'm going to think to myself, hey, fish are up. I'm keeping track of my time right now. Hey, fish are up. So if I don't get bit, let's say that I did realize that fish were on the bank. I'm going to keep going with that 3/8 ounce. But say I didn't see any fish up on the bank. I didn't hook anything shallower than 10 foot of water. That's my cue to say, hey, what's out deep? I'm going to grab my heavy rod, my 3/4 ounce swim jig, bomb it out there to deep water, and I'm going to probe deeper rock, deeper point, deeper grass edges. And a lot of times, if I get bit down deep, I may focus the whole day deep when everybody's plucking fish off the bank. I'm fishing a whole different class of fish than anybody else on that lake. So it's one of those things where you got to pick apart that lake. Go shallow, go deep, figure out where they're hanging, and keep going from there. Now we're going to go into...
Do you fish braided leader, or were you getting ready to cover that?
I was going to go into. When it comes to... I have my phone with it, too. One thing that I do is I fished braided leader for a lot of years, and braided leader was pretty cool. But what I found is the rods that I like to fish, being that they're a little heavier in action, I tend to pull hooks a lot more with my braided leader. It sounds stupid. You get a more direct contact. Shallow water, it's okay, but when you're fishing deeper than 30 foot of water, one big thing that, since I have a piece of paper here, I'm actually going to draw some... Actually, no, I don't need to do it. So, let's say I'm sitting on my boat. I'm on top of a spot. I'm targeting a 30 foot of water rock pile. I'm going to make my cast as far as I can out there. My bait's going to go straight down. But I'm going to have an element of bow in my line before I come in direct contact with my bait. It's going to take me half a retrieve in order to get my line directly from my actual jig head to my rod tip. By having fluorocarbon sinks. It allows me to be more in direct contact with my bait while that bait's in deeper depth. So shallow water, it's okay, but I personally fish 15-pound fluorocarbon. Now, when it's going into chatterbait fishing, chatterbait fishing is kind of one and the same with swim jig fishing. If I'm dealing with dirty water conditions, I need vibration. That's a lot of times when I'll bust out the chatterbait. Now, dirty water doesn't have to be picked mud. Doesn't have to be, swampy conditions like you're thinking. Dirty water, it's Delta water. It's backwater, Colorado River type stuff. Dirty water to me is still mudlines. And that's one big thing that I'll employ. Being that this bait is super small, streamlined, it's going to come through that mudline. fish are going to know it's there, but I want something to give them an opportunity to go, hey, maybe there's more than one of these things there. A lot of times that's when I'll actually go to these guys. With a chatterbait, I've experimented with flipping sticks. I've experimented with medium action rods. But there's a particular rod that I actually like to throw. It's what's called a Diablo Spec R in the Levante line of Megabass. What it is, it's a softer rod than my swim jig rods. Being that I have a single hook, and it's more like a jig on a swim jig, I need a heavier rod to crack them. With a chatterbait, it's more like a big crankbait. So I want a rod that's going to absorb those bites. And a lot of times with the chatterbait versus the swim jig, being that I want to absorb those bites, I'm going to throw braid to lead them. It's allowed me to cast really, really far, and seldom do I fish chatterbaits deeper than a 20-foot zone. I'm going to bomb that thing out there. Having a soft rod allows me, like I said, with the swim jig, allows me to place my cast in tight quarters. So softer rods, it'll absorb the bites a lot better, and I've actually found that it's actually helped me out. I used to use flipping sticks, lost a lot of fish doing that, caught a lot of fish, but I can keep them pinned a lot better with a softer action rod. With the gear ratio-wise versus swim jig or chatterbait, I tend to opt for more of a 7-to-1 or higher gear ratio. It allows me good quick pickup on line. Technique-wise, obviously I told you how to come through cover. One technique I want to give you guys a piece to my puzzle that I don't normally do. I try to give people everything, but one quick thing that has helped me before we go for the night, one quick thing that has helped me in my swim jig pursuit in deeper water is, like I said, throwing a 3/4 ounce or 3/4 ounce swim jig. I do it a little bit different. I take a play on a technique what's called stroking jigs. Sounds funny. And then it's another one that's like the swim bait thing. It's direction changes. So I'm going to bomb my bait. I'm going to find if the fish are deeper in the water column, 30, 40, 50 feet of water, I know they're relating to ledges, rock piles, mainland points, humps, whatever. I'm going to bomb my cast well over my target spot. I don't want to land on top of the fish. When you're eating food, you don't want chili cheese dogs flying down your head. You want to go get your food. You don't want it landing on top of your head. So a bass doesn't want to see a bluegill just going, he's going to go like, what the hell, and get spooked off. So I want to set up on my spot, ample distance from my spot, bomb my bait out there as far as I can, complete free spool. Do not click your rod. You click your reel. If you click your reel, your bait's going to pendulum into your spot. You're going to blow the whole thing out. Southern California water, highly pressured water, stealth entry. Long cast hits the bottom. As soon as that bait hits the bottom, I'm going to snap my rod tip. Rip, rip. What that does, for every rod twitch, I don't know if you can actually pan off the rod tip. Watch how far I move that. For every rip, I've moved my bait 4 feet. Think about this for a second. You're going to throw it out there. You're going to rip it. Boom, boom. That bait's going to be falling down. The fish know it's there. Rip, rip. It looks like a fleeing bluegill, fleeing shad, fleeing baby bass. I'm allowed to hit the bottom. I'm going to continue my retreat. Nice and steady. I'm going to bump everything I can. Being that your line is going to telegraph bites before your rod tip's going to feel, you're going to feel a heavy presence. When you feel that heavy presence, rip, rip, burn it a little bit, put it in free spool. Allow it to fall right back to the bottom. It's going to look like this. Say there's a boulder. Say this is your boulder. Your boat's right here. You got all this bottom contour right here. You got rocks, you got grass. Your bait hits the bottom, rip, rip. You're swimming it, you come across the boulder. That bass is on ambush points around that boulder. When you feel it come in contact and you rip, rip, and burn it, those fish that are sitting right here feel like they've accomplished their goal. They're going to react to that fish positively, and you can create a reaction strike like you would a crankbait, a spinnerbait, a jerkbait, only you're in 30 foot of water. You're 40 foot of water. And the key to most of my big fish fishing on Diamond Valley is, number one, off the beaten path. Stealth entry, targeting fish that don't get targeted. I'm fishing deep, I'm fishing mid-water column, I'm fishing out. I'm not fishing hugging the bank a lot. I used to. I realized bigger fish I'm finding are a little bit deeper than most. So obviously that was one of the biggest pieces that has helped me, and hopefully you can kind of get a little bit of understanding based on my system. So when you're faced with transition periods like we have right now, pre-spawn, spawn, post-spawn, you know fish are going to be shallow. You know fish are going to be mid-water column, and you know they're going to be deep. The biggest thing is how will you effectively find, or how can you effectively find the biggest group of hungry fish? Obviously, you know your shallow fish. Those are your spooky ones. Those are your bed fish. Rather than sit all day on those bed fish, I want to find active fish. I'm going to target mid-water column fish now. Obviously, you know, those fish are either moving up, moving down. You're going to get that mixed bag. You may get a big, fat pre-spawn fish. You may get an empty fish moving out. Odds are your deeper fish, those are the ones that are settled, either getting ready to move up or staying down deep. Those are your fattest, biggest fish. So hopefully in this tonight's Periscope episode, me talking about the swim jigs, hopefully it actually helped you kind of have a basic understanding on how to employ each different baits, why you would throw them. And if you have any questions, definitely contact me here at the shop. But before I go, I just want to give you a heads up. A lot of you guys are familiar with the Cool Baits product and stuff like that. You're down underspent. A lot of you have come into the shop recently going, do you have any of his trailers? Do you have any of his trailers? We finally got the trailers back in a variety of colors. They're available for sale right now, and hopefully, definitely, you guys can pick them up. But before I actually finalize this Periscope episode, if you guys have any questions, what I've talked about tonight, if you want me to clarify anything I may have missed, go ahead. I'm going to give you a couple minutes just to kind of compile some questions, and we'll go from there. Seems like I pretty much covered most of it.
Falcone, you're best in the West.
You're the kicker. Kicker John right there. Went fishing yesterday over Lake Skinner, and we got a chance to pull on some fish. And Kicker John over here caught himself a big fish. Got some pictures of it. Posted them up to the Last Chance photo album. Big congrats to that guy.
And then just we'll offer 10% off.
Oh, definitely. For anybody watching this Periscope, or what's the promo code?
Periscope.
Okay, for anybody watching this Periscope episode, toughed it out and watched me jibber jabber about swim jigs and rods and a bunch of junk on the counter. We're going to offer you guys 10% off your next purchase on Tackle.com with the promo code Periscope. And definitely, if you have any questions about what we talked about tonight, give me a shout here at the shop. You know, area code 951-658-7410. Visit us on Tackle.com, and we'll hook you up. Thanks, guys.